What's up, chat? Let's make this quick. I'm gonna go play some some pickleball, so let's get into it. Number 4. It is useful to compare the Sandusky scandal to a second, even more dramatic child molestation case that broke a few years later. It involved a doctor at Michigan State named Larry Nassar. Nassar served as the team physician for the USA gymnastics women's national team. He was bespectacled, garrulous, and a little awkward. He seemed harmless. He doted on his parents. He was the kind of person you could call on at 2 a.m. and he would come running. Parents loved him. He treated hips and shins and ankles and the myriad other injuries that result from the enormous stress that competitive gymnasts puts on young bodies. Nassar's specialty was the treatment of what is known as pelvic floor dysfunction, which involved him inserting his fingers into the vagina of a patient to massage muscles and tendons that had been shortened by the physical demands of gymnastic training. He did the pelvic floor procedure repeatedly and enthusiastically. He did it without consent, without wearing gloves, and when it wasn't necessary. He would massage his patient's breasts. He would penetrate them anally with his fingers for no apparent reason. He used a medical procedure as the cover of his own sexual gratification. He was convicted on federal charges in the summer of 2017 and will spend the rest of his life in prison. As sexual abuse scandals go, the Nassar case is remarkably clear-cut. This is not a matter of he said, she said. The police retrieved the hard drive from Nassar's computer and found a library of child pornography, 37,000 images in all, some of them unspeakably graphic. He had photographs of his young patients as they sat in his bathtub taking ice baths prior to treatment. He didn't have just one accuser telling a disputed story. He had hundreds of accusers telling remarkably similar stories. Here is Rachel Den Hollander, whose allegations against Nassar proved critical to his conviction. At age 15, when I suffered from chronic back pain, Larry sexually assaulted me repeatedly under the ghost of medical treatment for nearly a year. He did this with my own mother in the room, carefully and perfectly obstructed her view so she would not know what he was doing. Den Hollander had evidence, documentation. When I came forward in 2016, I brought an entire file of evidence with me. I brought medical records from a nurse practitioner documenting my graphic disclosure of abuse. I had my journal showing the mental angst I had been in since the assault. I brought a witness I had disclosed to it. I brought the evidence of 2 more women unconnected to me who were also claiming sexual assault. The Nassar case was open and shut, yet how long did it take to bring him to justice? Years. Larry C. Boyce, another of Nassar's victims, said that Nassar abused her in 1997 when she was 16, and what happened? Nothing. Boyce told the Michigan State gymnastics coach, Kathy Klauges. Klauges confronted Nassar. Nassar denied everything. Klauges believed Nassar, not Boyce. The allegations raised doubts, but not enough doubts. The abuse went on. At Nassar's trial, in a heart-training moment, Boyce addressed Nassar directly. I dreaded my next appointment with you because I was afraid that Kathy was going to tell you about my concerns, she said. And unfortunately, I was right. I felt ashamed, embarrassed, and overwhelmed that I had talked to Kathy about this. I vividly remember when you walked into that room, closed the door behind you, pulled up your stool, and sat down in front of me and said, "So I talked to Kathy." As soon as I heard those words, my heart sank. My confidence had been betrayed. I wanted to crawl into the deepest, darkest hole and hide. Over the course of Nassar's career as a sexual predator, there were as many as 14 occasions in which people in position of authority were warned and that something was amiss with him. Parents, coaches, officials, nothing happened. In September 2016, the Indianapolis Star published a devastating amount of Nassar's records, supported by Den Hollander's accusations. Many people close to Nassar backed him even after this. Nassar's boss, the dean of osteopathic medicine at Michigan State, allegedly told students, "This is just how This goes to show that none of you learned the most basic lesson in medicine 101. Don't trust your patients. Patients lie to get doctors in trouble. Kathy Kalgas had the gymnastics on her team sign a card of Nazar, thinking of you. It took the discovery of Nazar's computer hard drive with its trove of appalling images to finally changing people's minds. When scandals like this broke, one of our first inclinations is to erode those in change of covering for the criminal, of protecting him, or deliberately turning a blind eye, or putting the institutional or financial interests ahead of the truth. We look for a conspiracy behind the signs, but the Nazar case reminds us how inadequate the interpretation is. Many of Nazar's chief defenders were the parents of his patients. They weren't engaged in some kind of conspiracy of science to protect larger institutional financial interests. They were their children. Here is one gymnast mother, a medical doctor herself, incidentally in an interview of Believed, a brilliant podcast about the Nazar scandal. The woman was in the room while Nazar treated her daughter, sitting a few feet away. And I remember out of the corner of my eye seeing what looked to be potentially an erection. And I just remember thinking, that's weird, that's really weird, poor guy. Thinking like that would be very strange for a physician to get an erection in the patient's room while giving her an exam. But at the time when you're in the room and he's doing this procedure, you just think he's doing he's just being a good doctor and doing his best for your child. He was that slick. He was that smooth. In another instance, a woman goes to see Nazar with her father. Nazar puts his fingers inside her with her dad sitting in the room. Later that day, the gymnast tells her mother. Here's another mother looking back on the moment. I remember it like it was 5 seconds ago. I am in my driver's seat. She's in the passenger seat, and she said, "Larry did something to me today that made me feel uncomfortable." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, he touched me." And I said, "Well, touched you where?" He said, "Down there." And the whole time you know what she's saying, but you're trying to rationalize that it can't be that. So she called her husband and asked him if he had left the room at any time during the appointment. He said he hadn't, and God forgive me, I dropped it. I filed it back in the parenting filing cabinet until 2016. After a while, the stories all sound the same. Here's another patient, and she's sitting in the car very quiet and depressed and saying, "Dad, he's not helping my back pain. Let's not go anymore." But this is Larry. This is the gymnast doctor. If he can't cure her, nobody will cure her. Only God has more skills than Larry. Be patient, honey. It's gonna take time. Good things take time. And that's what we always taught our kids. So I would say, okay, we're going to go again next week. We're going to go again the following week, and then you'll start seeing the progress. She said, "Okay, Dad, I trust your judgment." The fact that Nazar was doing something notorious is exactly what makes the patient's position so difficult. If Nazar had been rude to their daughters, they would have spoken up immediately. If daughters had said to them on the way home that they had smelled liquor on Nazar's breath, most patients would have leaped to attention. It is not impossible to imagine that doctors, though occasionally rude or drunk, default to truth becomes an issue when we are forced to choose between two alternatives, one of which is likely and the other of which is impossible to imagine. Is Ana Montes the most highly placed Cuban spy in history, or was Reg Brown just being paranoid? Default to truth bias us in favor of the most likely interpretation. Scott Carmichael believed Ana Montes right up to the point where believing her became absolutely impossible. The parents did the same thing, not because they were neglected, but because this is how most human beings are wired. Many of the women he had abused, in fact, defended Nazar. They couldn't see past default to truth either. Trina Gonzar was treated 856 times by Nazar during her gymnast career. When one of her teammates came to Gonzaga and said that Nazar had put his fingers inside her, Gonzar tried to reassure her, "He does that to me all the time." When the Indianapolis Star broke the Nazar story by him, she was conceived. He would have been erected. It was all a big mix-up. When she did was finally change her mind only when the evidence against Nazar became overwhelming. And Nazar's trial, when Gazar joined the chorus of his victims in testifying against him, she finally gave in to her doubts. I had to make an extremely hard choice this week, Larry. I had to choose whether to continue supporting you through this or to support them, the girls. I chose them. I chose them, Larry. I chose to love them and protect them. I chose to stop caring for you and supporting you. I chose to look you in the face and tell you that you heard us, you heard me. I hope you will see it from me in my eyes today that I believed you always until I couldn't anymore. I hope you cry like we cry. I hope you feel bad for what you have done. I hope more than anything each day these girls can feel less pain. I hope you want that for us, but this is goodbye to you, Larry. This time it's time for me to close the door. It's time for me to stand up for these little girls and not stand behind you anymore, Larry. Goodbye, Larry. May God bless your dark, broken soul. I believed in you always until I couldn't anymore. Isn't that an almost perfect statement of default to truth? Default to truth operates even in a case where the predator had 37,000 child porn images on his hard drive and where he had been accused countless times by numerous people over the course of his career. Nazar's case was open and shut, and still there were doubts. Now imagine the same scenario, only in a case that isn't open and shut. That's the Sandusky case. Crazy. I gotta head out, but crazy how people live lives and have different thoughts and have different ways of making actions and decisions that hurt other people for their own gratification or for their own dopamine, for their own thrill. Crazy.